The Church Bells of Oakridge hadn't tolled for a death in nearly 3 years. In a town where everyone claimed to know everyone, death was a community affair, anticipated, prepared for, mourned collectively. But on that rain-soaked Wednesday morning, as the hollow sounds echoed across Main Street, no one was prepared for the name that would be whispered through trembling lips: Grace Thompson. Sheriff Callahan found her just after dawn. He'd been responding to a report of trespassing at Wilson Creek, probably just teenagers drinking again, he'd thought. Instead, he discovered a scene that would haunt him until his dying day. She was arranged like a sacrifice. The pastor's 18-year-old daughter lay half-submerged in the shallow water, her white dress billowing around her like a ghostly halo. Dark hair framed her face in wet tendrils. The bruises around her neck told a story that her silent lips never would. "It's like whoever did this wanted us to find her," Deputy Mills whispered, his young face pale. "They wanted us to see." Callahan didn't answer. He was staring at the silver cross still perfectly centered on Grace's collarbone, placed there deliberately. A message. By noon, everyone in Oakridge knew. By evening, they had their villain. The gang member they whispered in grocery aisles. The one she'd been seeing behind Pastor Thompson's back. Marcus Reyes, 19 years old. East Side King's tattoo crawling up his neck like a disease. The boy who'd walked into Riverdale Community Church 4 months ago during Pastor Thompson's celebrated outreach program, the boy who'd walked out with the pastor's daughter's heart in his hands. What they didn't know, what none of them could have imagined, was that Grace Thompson's final diary entry, written hours before her death, contained 3 words that would unravel everything they thought they knew about their perfect town, their beloved pastor, and the devastating price of redemption. Dad knows everything. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe now. This is a story you won't want to miss, a tale of forbidden love, hidden corruption, and the dark secrets lurking beneath small-town piety. Hit the like button if you're ready to discover who really killed Pastor Thompson's daughter. Oakridge, population 12,637, sat nestled in a valley surrounded by pine-covered hills, a postcard-perfect town with a dark underbelly few acknowledged. At its center stood the imposing white steeple of Riverdale Community Church, a beacon visible from every corner of town. For 20 years, Pastor Michael Thompson had cultivated not just a congregation but a reputation that bordered on sainthood. At 47, his salt-and-pepper hair and penetrating blue eyes commanded respect. His sermons blended fire and brimstone warnings with promises of divine grace, a combination that filled pews every Sunday and collection plates every service. What most chose not to see was the division that had grown alongside the church. The stark lines separating East Oakridge, with its aging apartment complexes and growing immigrant population, from the pristine neighborhoods surrounding Riverdale Community Church. Grace Thompson had been raised on the right side of that line. Her childhood home, a restored Victorian with wraparound porch and meticulous gardens, stood as a testament to her father's success. Private school education, piano lessons, summer mission trips to less fortunate countries where she posed for photos with smiling children. Grace was the physical embodiment of her name. Her Sunday school teacher would tell reporters after her death. Elegant, composed, a natural leader who inspired others through her example. But there had been another Grace, one only a handful of people ever glimpsed. The Grace who questioned, who doubted, who, at 13, had asked her father during dinner why their church spent millions on stained glass windows when people were sleeping in tents less than 3 miles away. "That was the first time I saw it," Sarah Thompson would later confess to Detective Alvarez. The flash of something in Michael's eyes when she challenged him. Not anger exactly. Something colder. By 16, Grace had mastered the art of being 2 people simultaneously. The perfect pastor's daughter in public, and in private, a young woman increasingly troubled by the contradictions in her father's teaching. Love thy neighbor, he preached, while supporting zoning laws that kept undesirables away. Judge not, he sermonized, while creating elaborate hierarchies of sin that always placed his own transgressions at the bottom. It was during this period of quiet rebellion that Grace began volunteering at her father's newest outreach initiative, the Open Doors program. On paper, it brought at-risk youth from East Oakridge into the church for meals, mentoring, and spiritual guidance. In practice, it yielded excellent photo opportunities. It was there, during a rainy February evening, that Marcus Reyes walked into her life, and everything changed. If you think you know where this story is headed, think again. This isn't just another tale of forbidden love. Before this video ends, You'll discover secrets that some in Oakridge would kill to keep buried. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. Marcus hadn't planned to set foot in Riverdale Community Church. Growing up in East Oakridge, he'd learned to be wary of charity that came with conditions. What changed his mind that February evening was simpler than spiritual curiosity. Hunger and rain. He'd been walking home from his shift at Jensen's Hardware when the sky opened up. The church, with its lit windows and promised free meal, offered the only shelter within blocks. Security camera footage captured the moment. Marcus hesitating at the church entrance as if sensing this threshold, once crossed, would alter his life irrevocably. Then Grace Thompson appeared in the doorway, silhouetted by warm light behind her. "You're getting soaked," she said, voice gentle but direct. "Come inside. We have plenty of food." For years, the East Side Kings had been Marcus's family, not by choice but necessity. In a neighborhood where police responded slowly if at all, where landlords ignored maintenance requests but never missed rent collection day, gang protection offered the only security many families knew. Marcus had never been a hardcore member, more adjacent than initiated, but the association was enough to mark him. The small crown tattoo on his neck was more protection than proclamation. What few in Oakridge understood was that the East Side Kings were as complex as the community they inhabited. They were certainly involved in illegal activities, but they also organized neighborhood watches, funded after-school basketball programs, and ensured elderly residents had working heaters in winter when slumlords ignored complaints. "The moment people see it, they stop seeing you," Marcus once told Grace about his tattoo. "Just like when people hear pastor's daughter, they stop seeing you." That shared experience of being defined by others' expectations created their first connection. During initial open doors sessions, they rarely spoke directly, but often found themselves gravitating toward each other like planets caught in mutual orbit. Their first real conversation happened during a community cleanup project in March. Groups were sent to paint over graffiti in East Oakridge, an activity Pastor Thompson promoted as reclaiming neighborhoods for Christ, but which many locals viewed as cultural erasure. Grace had been assigned to Marcus's team. As they painted over elaborate murals depicting neighborhood history, she noticed his reluctance. "You don't think we should be doing this?" she said. Not a question. Marcus looked at her, surprised by her perception. "Some of this isn't gang tags. It's history, community pride. My father says it promotes lawlessness. Your father sees what he wants to see." Instead of defending Pastor Thompson as expected, Grace studied the partially covered mural, an intricate depiction of immigrant families building homes together. "It's beautiful," she admitted quietly. "I never really looked before." That small moment of honesty marked the beginning. After that day, they began talking regularly, first about superficial things, then about their lives, their dreams, their frustrations with the boxes others put them in. By April, they were meeting secretly. By May, those meetings had evolved into something deeper. "She made me feel like I existed," Marcus would tell police during questioning. "Not as a project to be saved. Not as some charity case. Just as me." For Grace, Marcus represented a reality outside the carefully constructed world her father had built around her. He asked questions no one in her circle dared ask. He challenged her assumptions without cruelty. He made her laugh, genuine, unrestrained laughter that her proper church friends would have found undignified. What neither of them recognized was how dangerous their growing connection would become, not because of cultural differences or gang affiliations, but because of who Grace's father really was beneath his pastoral facade. Before we continue with this tragic story, take a moment to like this video and leave a comment sharing your thoughts so far. Your engagement helps others find this important story, and I read every comment. Their relationship shifted from friendship to something more on an unseasonably cold night in late April. A sudden storm forced them to seek shelter in the park's bandstand. Rain drummed on the ornate roof as they watched lightning illuminate the park in brief, electric moments. "I've been thinking about what you said," Grace began. "About my father seeing what he wants to see. Have I offended the pastor's daughter?" Marcus teased, though there was genuine concern in his voice. "No." She hesitated. "You've got me questioning things." Last Sunday, Dad preached about Jesus dining with tax collectors and sinners, about radical inclusion. Then yesterday, I heard him on the phone with the mayor arguing against the proposed homeless shelter because it would attract undesirable elements to our neighborhood. And this surprises you? It shouldn't, should it? Her voice was small. I've been watching him compartmentalize my whole life. Different rules for different situations. Different faces for different audiences. Marcus reached for her hand. Everyone wears masks, Grace. Even me. Especially me. She looked at their joined hands, then up at him. Not with me. Please. No, he agreed softly. Not with you. The kiss that followed wasn't planned or expected. But in that moment, as rain created a curtain around them, isolating them from the world, something shifted irrevocably. I knew it was dangerous, Grace would write in her diary. Not because of who he is, but because for the first time in my life I'm seeing clearly. And once you start seeing, you can't go back to blindness. By May, they were meeting whenever possible, careful and vigilant, aware that discovery would have consequences neither was prepared to face. But as with most secrets in small towns, containment proved impossible. Ellie Carson, Grace's best friend since childhood, noticed the changes first. After sworn promises of secrecy, Grace confided in her. Just be careful, Ellie cautioned. Not just because of who he is, but because of who your dad is. You know how he gets when he feels challenged. This wasn't hyperbole. Pastor Thompson's warm public persona masked a man obsessed with control, particularly over his family. Sarah Thompson had learned early in their marriage to suppress her own opinions. Grace had witnessed her mother's slow erasure, the way she became more silent, more compliant with each passing year. One former church member described Pastor Thompson as a man who confuses control for godliness. He's not violent, the ex-member clarified to Detective Alvarez after Grace's murder. It's more insidious than that. He wields disappointment like a weapon. Makes you feel that God himself is disappointed in you when you don't align with Michael's vision. The East Side Kings were watching too. Diego Reyes, Marcus's older brother and a fully patched member, noticed the changes in his sibling. The pastor's daughter? Are you insane? Do you know what Elijah would say? What he might do? It's not about her father, Marcus insisted. It's about her. She's different, Diego. She sees things others don't. She's using you, Diego warned. These church people always have angles. Maybe she thinks she's saving you. Maybe it's some rebellion against Daddy. Either way, brother, this ends badly for you. What neither brother fully appreciated was how quickly their worlds were colliding on multiple fronts, with Grace and Marcus's relationship merely one fault line in a landscape riddled with dangerous tensions. For years, Harrison Mills, owner of Mills Development and the church's most generous donor, had been quietly acquiring properties in East Oakridge. Rundown apartment buildings. Vacant lots. Failed businesses. One by one, these properties appeared in his portfolio, typically purchased at prices well below market value. If you've been following this story so far, make sure to hit the subscribe button and notification bell. In the next segment, we'll reveal the secret connections between Pastor Thompson, Harrison Mills, and the East Side Kings, connections that set Grace Thompson on a collision course with killers. Harrison Mills presented himself as Oakridge's premier philanthropist. At 62, his silver hair and designer suits projected success and respectability. His company logo adorned Little League uniforms, hospital wings, and holiday celebrations. What most Oakridge residents didn't know was that Mills's business model relied heavily on predatory gentrification, the systematic acquisition and redevelopment of low-income neighborhoods, displacing original residents to attract wealthier ones. The strategy was elegant in its cruelty: buy properties in targeted areas. Perform minimal maintenance. Wait for code violations to accumulate. Raise rents beyond residents' means. When they inevitably fall behind, evict them. Renovate. Triple the rent. Repeat. What made his Oakridge operation unique was his partnership with Riverdale Community Church, a partnership that began as simple philanthropy but evolved into something far more lucrative for both parties. The church needed expansion space but faced zoning restrictions. Mills needed public support for his redevelopment projects but faced community resistance. Their solution came in the form of the Oakridge Renewal Initiative, a joint venture cloaked in religious and civic language. Pastor Thompson would preach about reclaiming neighborhoods for Christ, and urban renewal as spiritual mission. The church would purchase strategic properties with funds donated by Mills. These properties would be used temporarily for outreach programs, food pantries, youth centers, addiction recovery meetings, establishing a church presence in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Mills would acquire surrounding properties. Once the church's presence had improved, the area and property values increased. Mills would buy the church properties at inflated prices. The church profited. Mills gained consolidated ownership blocks perfect for luxury development. And East Oakridge residents found themselves gradually priced out of their own neighborhood. It was a perfect system, until Grace Thompson began to notice the pattern. Her first suspicions arose during an open-doors planning meeting in April. Pastor Thompson was discussing the closure of their current East Oakridge Youth Center and the blessing of a new location 6 blocks east. But that moves us further from where most participants live, Grace had pointed out. And didn't we just renovate the current building last year? God has provided a better opportunity, her father replied smoothly. The new location is more suitable for our growing ministry. What he didn't mention, what Grace would discover weeks later through public records, was that the less suitable current location had just been sold to Mills Development for 3 times what the church had paid 2 years earlier. This discovery coincided with Grace learning that Marcus's family had received an eviction notice. The apartment building where his mother and younger sisters lived had been purchased by a shell company that traced back to Mills Development. Rent had doubled. When residents protested, maintenance stopped completely. 15 families, Marcus told her, anger barely contained. Most have lived there for decades. Where are they supposed to go? There's no affordable housing left in Oakridge. The connection between her father's church, Mills, and the displacement of East Oakridge residents became Grace's obsession. She began researching property transfers, attending city council meetings, collecting documentation, all while maintaining her role as the pastor's perfect daughter. Then came her most shocking discovery. While searching her father's office for church financial reports, she found a laptop with emails between Pastor Thompson and Harrison Mills discussing alternative funding channels and the Cayman arrangement. Further digging revealed a complex scheme. Donations to the church's International Mission Fund were being diverted to offshore accounts, then recycled back as private loans to finance property acquisitions. It was a fraud, tax evasion, potentially money laundering. And Grace had evidence. The moral conflict tormented her. Her diary entries from this period reveal her struggle. How do you reconcile loving someone with seeing their corruption? Dad taught me about absolute truth, about moral clarity. Now I see that his world is built on lies. Not just small compromises, but systematic deception. Using God's name to displace the vulnerable. Using the church to enrich himself. Everything he preaches against, he embodies. By early June, Grace and Marcus had begun cautiously discussing a future together, leaving Oakridge after she finished her first year of college, finding a place where neither of them would be defined by their pasts. She talked about studying law, Marcus would tell the police. About using legal means to fight housing discrimination. She said what was happening in East Oakridge was happening everywhere, and she wanted to stop it. These dreams collided with reality on June 10th when Pastor Thompson discovered text messages between Grace and Marcus on her phone. Sarah Thompson, who witnessed the argument, described her husband as more controlled than I've ever seen him. Not yelling. Almost eerily calm. According to Sarah, Pastor Thompson systematically dismantled every aspect of his daughter's life in a single evening. He revoked her college scholarship. He froze her bank account. He took her car keys, her phone, and her laptop. You've made your choice, he told Grace, voice cold. Now live with the consequences. When Grace defiantly stated she would continue seeing Marcus, her father's mask of control slipped momentarily. That gang member will be imprisoned before the month is out, he said. I have friends in the prosecutor's office. One call about drug sales near school property with evidence to support it, and your boyfriend disappears for years. You wouldn't, Grace had challenged. You're a pastor. A man of God. Her father's response revealed the man behind the ministerial facade. I am a man who protects what's his. This church. This family. Our reputation. I've worked too hard to let you destroy everything with your naive rebellion. Grace was effectively placed under house arrest. What Pastor Thompson didn't realize was that Grace had already secured her evidence in a cloud account accessible from any computer. nor did he know she had given Ellie an emergency key to their home. 3 days after being confined while her parents attended a church board meeting, Grace escaped with Ellie's help. She took only a backpack with essential documents, her diary, and the silver cross necklace her father had given her for her 16th birthday, a reminder, she told Ellie, of what faith should be, not what he's made it. For 2 weeks, Grace moved between safe locations before finding refuge in Marcus's apartment. During this time, she compiled her evidence and considered her options. She wanted justice, not revenge, Marcus would emphasize repeatedly during questioning. She talked about approaching the IRS, the FBI. She wanted legal accountability, not public scandal. What Grace didn't fully comprehend was how many powerful people in Oakridge were complicit in or benefiting from her father's arrangements with Mills. The mayor received generous campaign contributions. The police chief's brother sat on the church board. The local newspaper depended on Mills' development advertising revenue. She was challenging not just her father but an entire system of power and privilege, a system that would not relinquish control without a fight. If this story of corruption and power struggles has captured your attention, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others. In our next segment, we'll reveal the fatal mistakes Grace Thompson made in the days leading up to her murder and the conspiracy that silenced her forever. Subscribe now so you don't miss the shocking revelations to come. By late June, Grace Thompson's relationship with Marcus Reyes was no longer Oakridge's best-kept secret. Pastor Thompson had characterized his daughter's absence as a spiritual retreat, but rumors spread quickly. The church community largely rallied around their pastor, offering prayers for his troubled daughter and condemning the negative influence that had led her astray. Few questioned Pastor Thompson's narrative. Grace, meanwhile, was finalizing her case. With Marcus's support, she organized her evidence and reached out to contacts she believed might help, including James Whitley, a former church security consultant now working for the state attorney general's office. I have documentation of financial crimes involving Riverdale Community Church, her initial email to Whitley stated. Given your familiarity with the organization and your current position, I believe you're uniquely positioned to ensure this information reaches the appropriate authorities. What Grace didn't know was that Whitley remained firmly in Pastor Thompson and Mills's sphere of influence, a fact he immediately demonstrated by forwarding Grace's email to them. The response was swift and coordinated. Mills activated contingency plans to protect financial assets. Pastor Thompson accelerated the narrative of his daughter's mental health crisis. And Whitley reached out to Grace with practiced sympathy, agreeing to meet and review her evidence. I almost talked her out of it. Marcus would later tell detectives, voice hollow with regret. Something about Whitley bothered me. The timing was too convenient. But Grace believed in systems, in institutions. She thought if she could just get her evidence to the right people, justice would follow automatically. Their final conversation about Whitley's proposed meeting occurred the evening of September 12th, the night before Grace's body would be discovered in Wilson Creek. Grace had received a text from Whitley changing their meeting location from the Attorney General's satellite office to Wilson Creek Bridge, ostensibly for privacy concerns. It's too isolated, Marcus had argued. Meet him in public, in daylight. He says he's bringing someone from the Financial Crimes Unit, Grace countered. They need to see the evidence before they can act. Then let me come with you. You can't, she insisted. If you're seen with me during this meeting, they could claim the evidence was tampered with or that I was coerced by gang connections. I need to do this alone to establish credibility. Marcus had to work that evening, a shift he couldn't afford to miss with rent coming due. Their parting was hurried, distracted by the logistics of Grace's meeting. I told her I loved her, Marcus recalled, voice breaking. She said she'd call me right after the meeting, that we'd celebrate taking the first step toward justice. That call never came. Security footage would later piece together Grace's final hours. At 7:15 p.m., she left Marcus's apartment building. At 7:42 p.m., traffic cameras captured her silver Honda Civic heading toward Wilson Creek. At 8:13 p.m., she purchased a coffee at a gas station, checking her phone repeatedly. At 8:27 p.m., the last confirmed sighting. Grace parking her car near Wilson Creek Bridge, gathering a folder of documents, and walking toward the pedestrian path that led to the meeting point. What happened at Wilson Creek was later pieced together from forensic evidence, witness statements, and eventually confessions. Grace arrived to find not just James Whitley waiting, but Pastor Michael Thompson as well. The key witness, Sergeant Robert Hayes, a homeless veteran with a hidden campsite near the creek, described what he observed. The young woman looked shocked to see the older man. Kept saying, "Dad, what are you doing here?" They argued. She was holding papers, trying to put them back in a folder. The older man kept saying she was making a terrible mistake, ruining lives over misunderstandings. The younger man stood back, watching them argue. According to Hayes, the confrontation escalated when Grace realized the full extent of the setup. She said something like, "You're not here from the AG's office at all, are you?" to the younger man. She tried to leave, said she had copies of everything, that stopping her wouldn't matter. That's when the younger man grabbed her. Hayes described the struggle that followed. Grace fighting back fiercely, Whitley producing what appeared to be a wallet chain, wrapping it around her neck. The older man, her father, he just watched. Didn't help her. Didn't stop it. She looked right at him, reaching out, and he just stood there. Even when she stopped moving, he just stood there. Hayes, afraid for his own safety, remained hidden until the men left with Grace's folder. Only then did he approach her body, finding no pulse. Terrified and with no cell phone, he fled the scene, not reporting what he'd witnessed until Marcus Reyes tracked him down weeks later. The official discovery of Grace's body came the following morning, her arms carefully arranged across her chest, her silver cross centered on her collarbone, staged to appear like a ritual gang killing, a message. By noon, news of Grace Thompson's murder had spread throughout Oakridge. By evening, as the pastor gathered with church leaders for a prayer vigil, suspicion had already focused on Marcus Reyes and the East Side Kings. Sheriff Callahan, whose campaign had received significant donations from both Mills and Riverdale Community Church, quickly formed a task force focused on gang connections. Marcus was brought in for questioning within hours, his apartment searched, his alibi scrutinized. What saved Marcus from immediate arrest was ironclad video evidence placing him at Jensen's Hardware throughout the evening of Grace's murder, confirmed by multiple witnesses and time-stamped security footage. Without a direct link to the crime, authorities pivoted to investigating whether he had ordered the killing through gang connections. This narrative gained traction when forensic analysis identified the ligature marks on Grace's neck as consistent with wallet chains commonly associated with gang members. Anonymous sources close to the investigation leaked that Grace had been killed as retaliation for her relationship with Marcus. Pastor Thompson, appearing devastated in public, fueled these theories in carefully worded statements about the dangers young people face when exposed to violent elements in our society, and his regret that he couldn't protect my daughter from those who sought to harm her. The investigation might have continued down this path if not for two unexpected developments. First, Detective Maria Alvarez, recently transferred from Grantville's Homicide Division, noticed discrepancies in the initial police reports. Evidence appeared selectively documented. Witness statements that didn't support the gang narrative were minimized. The crime scene photos suggested staging that seemed too deliberate for a spontaneous gang attack. When Alvarez attempted to broaden the investigation, she encountered institutional resistance. Sheriff Callahan assigned her to peripheral tasks. Evidence she requested was delayed or declared misplaced. The second development came through Marcus Reyes himself. Devastated by Grace's death but certain of his innocence, he launched his own investigation, approaching it with the same methodical determination that had characterized Grace's evidence gathering. "She taught me how to research, how to document everything," Marcus explained to Detective Alvarez during their third unofficial meeting. "Grace believed in evidence, in building an unassailable case. So that's what I'm doing." While police focused on gang connections, Marcus systematically traced Grace's movements on her final day. He recovered deleted security footage from businesses near Wilson Creek. He located and interviewed potential witnesses the police had overlooked. He meticulously documented inconsistencies in the official narrative. Most crucially, he found Sergeant Robert Hayes. "I didn't come forward right away," Hayes admitted when Marcus finally tracked him down. "Who believed me? Homeless vet accuses town's beloved pastor of watching his daughter die? But I can't sleep. Keep seeing her face. The way she looked at him, begging for help." Marcus recorded Hayes' testimony and brought it, along with his other findings, to Detective Alvarez. She was struck by the details Hayes provided, details not released to the public, details only someone who witnessed the murder would know. The wallet chain had a distinctive emblem, Hayes had noted. Not a crown like the kings use. Something with wings. And the girl, Grace, was wearing a beaded bracelet that broke during the struggle. Beads went everywhere. Blue and white ones. Both details matched evidence collected at the scene but never mentioned in press briefings. Alvarez took the information to her former partner in Grantville, Detective James Wilson, bypassing the Oakridge chain of command she no longer trusted. Together, they began building a parallel investigation. Their first breakthrough came through financial records. Whitley, though employed by the State Attorney General's office, was receiving regular payments from a consulting firm owned by Harrison Mills. These payments had increased significantly in the weeks before and after Grace's murder. Next came phone records showing multiple calls between Pastor Thompson, Mills, and Whitley in the 48 hours preceding Grace's death, and a critical call from Whitley to Pastor Thompson minutes after the estimated time of murder. Then surveillance footage from a bank 3 towns over showed Mills removing items from a safety deposit box the morning after Grace's death. Items he transferred to an unmarked envelope and handed to Pastor Thompson in the bank parking lot. The key to breaking the case ultimately came from an unexpected source. Sarah Thompson. For 3 weeks following her daughter's murder, Sarah had played the role expected of her, the grieving mother standing by her pastor husband. But those closest to her noticed changes. Significant weight loss, trembling hands, moments of disorientation. The facade cracked completely during Grace's memorial service. As Pastor Thompson delivered a moving eulogy about his daughter's pure heart and unwavering faith, Sarah suddenly stood up in the front pew. "Liar," she said, the single word cutting through the church's hushed atmosphere. "She saw what you are." Before stunned congregants could react, Sarah collapsed, suffering what was initially reported as a nervous breakdown. She was hospitalized under sedation while church members whispered about grief-induced psychosis. What actually transpired was something far more consequential. During her hospital stay, Sarah Thompson asked to speak with law enforcement, specifically requesting Detective Alvarez by name. The interview that followed provided the framework for everything that would come after. Sarah revealed that she had suspected her husband's involvement in their daughter's death from the beginning, had seen his calculated grief, his careful performance of innocence. "Michael came home the night Grace died with mud on his shoes," she told Alvarez. "His hands were shaking so badly he dropped his car keys 3 times. When I asked where he'd been, he said church meeting without looking at me. There was no church meeting that night. I'm the one who maintains his calendar." More damning was what Sarah discovered the following day. Her husband washing a shirt with what appeared to be bloodstains. A shirt he later burned in their backyard fire pit. Sarah also confirmed what Grace had discovered about the offshore accounts, the property scheme with Mills, and the systematic displacement of East Oakridge residents, all orchestrated under the guise of Christian ministry. "Our entire life was a fraud," she concluded. "The church, the mission work, the outreach programs, all of it designed to enrich Michael and his friends while wrapping their greed in religious language." Armed with Sarah's testimony and the evidence already gathered, Detectives Alvarez and Wilson took their case to the state police, circumventing Oakridge authorities entirely. A specialized financial crimes team joined the investigation, following money trails that confirmed Grace's original discoveries. As pressure mounted and evidence accumulated, the conspiracy began to unravel. James Whitley, facing murder charges and offered a deal to testify against his co-conspirators, was found dead in his apartment, an apparent suicide with a typed confession claiming sole responsibility for Grace's murder. The suicide note stated that Whitley had acted alone, without instruction or knowledge from Pastor Thompson or Mills. This convenient narrative might have gained traction if not for one critical oversight. Forensic analysis revealed the suicide note had been printed on Harrison Mills's home office printer, not Whitley's. With Whitley silenced permanently, the investigation focused on Mills and Pastor Thompson. Search warrants for their homes, offices, and electronic devices yielded damning evidence. Draft plans for handling the Grace situation, emails discussing the need for permanent solutions to her threats of exposure, and most incriminating, Pastor Thompson's journal entries expressing concern that his daughter had abandoned family loyalty for a misguided crusade. As the case against them strengthened, Harrison Mills made one final attempt to escape justice. He offered to testify against Pastor Thompson in exchange for immunity, claiming he had been manipulated by the charismatic preacher. This strategy collapsed when investigators discovered Mills had purchased the distinctive wallet chain used to strangle Grace, a custom piece with his company's winged logo as the connector. Sales records showed it was one of 12 ordered as executive gifts the previous Christmas, with one specifically designated for James Whitley. The arrests of Pastor Michael Thompson and Harrison Mills sent shockwaves through Oakridge. Some church members refused to believe the evidence, claiming persecution of Christian leadership. Others, confronted with financial records showing their donations had funded luxury lifestyles rather than ministry, expressed feelings of betrayal and violation. The trials that followed became national news. Mills accepted a plea deal, testifying against Pastor Thompson in exchange for a reduced sentence. Pastor Thompson maintained his innocence through a 7-week trial that exposed decades of manipulation and fraud. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, accessory to murder, fraud, money laundering, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice. As the verdicts were read, Sarah Thompson sat in the courtroom, her face a mask of grief, not for the husband she was losing to prison, but for the daughter whose death had finally exposed the truth. Marcus Reyes attended every day of the trial, wearing Grace's silver cross around his neck. When asked by reporters about his feelings toward Pastor Thompson, his response was measured. Grace believed everyone deserves justice, not vengeance. I'm trying to honor the belief even now. In the aftermath, Riverdale Community Church disbanded, its building eventually purchased by a community coalition that transformed it into an affordable housing advocacy center. Sarah Thompson established a foundation in Grace's name to support victims of financial exploitation and housing discrimination. And Marcus Reyes, once reflexively feared and dismissed as just another gang member, was recognized for his pivotal role in solving the case. He used the reward money to complete his education, eventually becoming an attorney specializing in housing rights, fighting the same systemic injustices that Grace had recognized and opposed. On the 1-year anniversary of Grace's death, a small memorial was erected at Wilson Creek, not at the murder site, but at a peaceful bend in the water where she and Marcus had once met to discuss their dreams for the future. The plaque bears no lengthy inscription, no biblical verse, just 7 words that encapsulated Grace Thompson's brief but consequential life. She saw the truth and spoke it. If this story has moved you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share. At Silent Crime Witness, we believe in honoring victims by telling their full stories, not just how they died, but how they lived and what they stood for. Leave a comment with your thoughts on this case. See you tomorrow.